Shalom Chavrim, I'm Steve Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Friends, we do have breaking news coming out of the Middle East, and it's not just EHA news speaking about Jordanians moving their particular tanks and assault vehicles towards the Syrian border near bordering where Daraa, where the Syrian government and Russian Air Force have been bombing the militants, the ISIS, Al-Qaeda members that are stationed down there in Daraa region. Also Quneitra on the border of Israel. This is something that's been gearing up now for several weeks. Tiger forces, the Russian military has been training special operations on how to conduct this massive assault that they were going to do to retake this part of the Syrian government's border. And of course, I can certainly see why it should be done. I mean, after all, President Bashar al-Assad, it's his country. His people overwhelmingly support him and have voted him in as their president. But I also clearly see biblical prophecy on the verge of being fulfilled, especially in light of what's going on besides the Jordanians moving their tanks and equipment to the border. Kind of show you some of the pictures here they're sharing with us here on Twitter this evening here. They're showing the tanks moving in that direction there. But remember, we reported here on Israeli News Live back in 2016 the massive military base of armament that the U.S. and Britain also have in the country of Jordan. And of course, the Ro-Ro ship that was docked there at the Jordanian port in the Gulf of Aqaba, unloading even more assets, moving them up there to the Jordanian-Syrian border. Now, speaking of that, we also have here ITA Mil radar. They're showing now, here just recently in the last few minutes here, that the Royal Air Force Bombardier R-1 Sentinel from the Royal Air Force Akrotiri entering into Jordan airspace from Israel to make a surveillance mission over Iraq and Syrian border. We can see that here on the images right in behind me here as they cross into Israel. And of course, you can see here, let me jump over to the maps here so we get a little bit more of a bird's eye view. Got to find it. Got so many windows open right now. Here we go, Syria right here. What's going on? Where are we at? We are looking at this region right here. This is Daraa right here. Quneitra is right up here on the Golan Heights border area, down here by Jordan. And of course, the State Department, Nikki Haley, once again announcing for the third time, warning Russia and President Bashar al-Assad not to continue to attack the Al-Qaeda and ISIS militants that are down in this area, or the Free Syrian Army for that matter, which just lets you know this is a safe haven for terrorists. Terrorists that are supported by the U.S., Britain, even Israel, unfortunately, to our own shame to see that Israel is involved in this to begin with. You know, after all, what do we think as an Israeli people? What do we really think? Do you think that these militants that we have been backing care anything about the Jewish people? No, they will behead Israelis as rapidly as they would the Syrian soldiers that they fight against. They would eat the heart out of the human being of an Israeli as rapidly as they would eat the heart out of the Syrian soldiers that they have done so in the past. And to think that the U.S. government is still backing them, the British government, and France as well. Very troubling situation that's going on here. Moving on also, we have Haaretz is speaking about this as well. So Syrian army bombs rebel-held areas in southwest Syria for first time in a year. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says regime helicopters dropped more than 12 bombs on rebel-held territory northeast of Daraa. No deaths reported. Well, it's kind of hard to tell what the deaths are going to be as of yet anyway. A War Monitor reported Syrian military helicopter dropped barrel bombs on rebel-held areas in the southwest of Friday for the first time in a year. Now, let me tell you something. When they go to talking about the Syrian government dropping barrel bombs, you can count on one thing that's coming next. You got it. That's right. It's definitely going to be the false flag chemical attack that they can blame on Assad. If Haaretz is already saying that they're dropping barrel bombs, you can count on one thing: those little special made machines that were developed in the United States to be able to launch a barrel bomb will actually have chlorine or sarin gas or something. And no doubt the poor civilians that have been held prisoner by ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Al-Nusra, and even the white helmets there in Daraa will certainly end up being the victims if that actually happens. And we actually got a little bit of report on that as well coming up in a few moments here. The first direct confrontation between Syria and the army and the U.S. military. This article coming out here on awadnews.com. This describes what happened in the event that we spoke about the other day. They were saying that there were 3 American vehicles advancing toward one of its positions in al-Halbat, Syria. That, by the way, is just north of the Al-Tanf area. And they said that the southeast of Tadmor in the desert of Homs. Subsequently, planes of the international coalition led by the United States raided Syrian army positions in eastern Homs province. That was after the Syrian, of course, military confronted in a direct confrontation with the U.S. military vehicles that were headed in their position. The aircraft belonging to the U.S.-led coalition carried out airstrikes against army positions in Jabal Gurad, 150 kilometers east of Palmyra near the Iraqi border. He said reports the Russian agency Sputnik. Kind of moving into other issues here, the U.S. accuses unknown force of targeting their troops near Al-Tanf. And that kind of, if I'm not mistaken, this is the situation that is going hand in hand. Again, let's jump over to the map here so you can kind of get a bird's eye view. If I can get rid of that screen capture there. I want to kind of share with you where this is all happening at, what they're talking about. You have here, and back out, it's not going to show us that way. I was hoping to be able to catch it there. But anyway, Al-Tanf is right down here. This is Iraq, this is Jordan, this is Syria. Al-Tanf is here. The U.S. has a base there. And somewhere up in this region here, if I understand right, is where this the U.S. military vehicles were headed that direction. They got in a confrontation with the Syrians. This is what happened a couple of days ago that we reported to you guys. And of course, then the U.S. coalition sent in their aircraft to do heavy bombing. But at this point here, I think that they are getting ready to go on all-out attack. And with these barrel bombs being reported by Haaretz, there is no doubt that they're going to say that they are using chemical weapons. This is the perfect opportunity. They're trying to get all the media into place to be able to blame Bashar al-Assad for yet another false flag chemical attack. We also have breaking that the Free Syrian Army group reportedly defects to the Syrian army in southwest Syria. This came out today as well. That was a shock to hear about that. Beirut, Lebanon, a large Free Syrian Army has allegedly defected to the Syrian Arab Army side. The Russian Reconciliation Center reported this evening the alleged Free Syrian Army faction that defected to the Syrian Arab Army was not named, but that's kind of interesting to see that they actually defected. Unfortunately, though, I'm afraid it's not going to go well with pretty much anybody, because it does look like that the U.S. coalition is getting ready to unleash all, well, you know what I'm going to say, H-E-double-L, on Syria. And I hate to say that, I hate to even think about it, but I do believe that that is coming. Let me get into this before we jump into the issue about the Kurds here. We also have, where is it at here? Yes, right here. This also coming out from Hedge. They reported that the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov and U.S. Pompeo discussed Syria, Korea's by phone. That happened moments ago. The story is still not out there as to what that discussion is fully about. But no doubt with the situation escalating in Syria right now, I'm sure Mike Pompeo was letting Foreign Minister Lavrov know that unless Russia gets Syria to stop doing or stop this last offensive to take back their southern borders there, that there is definitely going to be a major price to pay. And whether or not Russia will back down or not, Well, that remains to be seen. We'll have to see how that plays out. Now, let's back up just a moment here. As conditions shift in Syria, the Kurds open to talks with Damascus. That's another interesting story. That's what kind of lets me know this is fixing to turn into a major war here. But it's really, the situation with the Kurds is coming at a time a little bit too late, I'm afraid, because if a massive war breaks out right now, how would the Syrian government be able to work rapidly enough with the Kurds to stop the offensive of the Turkish military? After all, you have to understand that the Turkish government has now been allowed with the U.S. to enter into Manbij, or Manbij, however you want to pronounce the name there. That's that region. Again, we'll jump back over to our map here. This is the very sensitive area there in the north part of Syria. As we know, we know that the Turkish government, they basically were genociding the Kurdish people over in the city of Afrin, which is over here to the northwest part of Syria. Manbij, or Manbij, this is the location where the U.S. had been staying loyal there, protecting the Kurds there from a Turkish all-out offensive, as the Turkish government considers the PKK and the PYG, the different fighting factions for the Kurds, as terrorist organizations. They're not terrorist organizations. These are people that have been loyal in fighting ISIS, and they have been the best fighters against ISIS in the entire war there. One reason why I think the U.S. is a little bit upset with the Kurds, because under the Obama administration, well, we created the ISIS military with some help with the Mossad in doing this of Israel. So it's a very troubling situation that is happening there at this time here. But, as I said, the Kurds are now in, again, this is not the first time, about the third time that I'm aware of, the Kurds are now in direct negotiation with Damascus, because I think they realize, they see what's coming. The U.S., now we see the British Air Force down in the region. They're getting ready for a massive war. It is believed that this is also going to be the time they're going to go after Iran at the same time. We already see that the Israelis were, when they made the attack in eastern Syria just about a week ago there, they were targeting Iraqi forces with Syrian forces, and no doubt Israel probably was considered this to be Iranian-backed fighters in the region. Still no word from Israel as of yet. It seems like Prime Minister Netanyahu is too bogged down with the situation with his wife being indicted. Kind of an interesting article. I shared it on our Facebook page, Israeli News Live there. Haaretz brought this up and said that his wife was named in the indictment, but it's at the Prime Minister's residence, and no, his name's not there. They said he just threw his wife under the bus. I thought, that reminds me of Adam, doesn't it? The woman you gave me, she did it, instead of taking responsibility and helping his wife in this indictment, well, she just kind of got hung out to dry. Moving on, also in other news there, let's move on down here. This is coming out on New Terrain Truth. Militants manufactured poisonous agents in Syria using Western-made hardware, according to the Russian military. That's something that just came out as well. And I've never used this site before, so I don't see an actual article on this other than the title of this article here. Then we'll move on over here. And this is where Nikki Haley, again, they were speaking here, U.S. Ambassador to the UN. Nikki Haley has said that Assad regime violations, the ceasefire in southwest Syria must stop, and call on Russia to play a role to stop the Assad regime's violations, saying that Russia will be responsible for any escalation. Again, if you notice that's some pretty hard lines there. Russia's going to be responsible? How do they plan on making Russia responsible? Is it going to be an attack on Russia? Well, that's kind of interesting, because if you look at what's going on, the reconnaissance around Crimea and Kaliningrad up in just north of Poland, some of the most provocative spy plane activity that I have ever seen. Kaliningrad yesterday, totally encircled. U.S. just circling the entire country, little tiny small spot there that Russia has up there north of Poland. And then today down in Crimea, the same thing. The U.S. spy planes just circling Crimea and then going all the way up and back and down and forth there on the eastern part of Ukraine where Donetsk and Luhansk regions are there. It's almost as if the U.S. is daring Russia to even say, move out of our airspace. Very, very interesting. It seems to me that if they get involved with Russia in Syria, the U.S. NATO allies are preparing to take out also the situation in Europe with Russia as well. This could turn into a world war. Don't forget Nathan, the young Jewish boy with his near-death experience. He said the flashpoint is Syria. And he said it'll start off about 2 weeks. It'll just be an all-out, knockdown, drag-out between the U.S. and Russian allies. And then he said it'll go to a nuclear war, and I think it's like 1 million or 2 million people would die, but it won't last too long. And it'll kind of calm down. That's when they're going to bring out that new world order. And believe me, if nukes start dropping in America, don't forget, you know what we just talked about when it came to the children that are being separated from their families. And like I said, I know there's a lot. Listen, I'm not here to try to call pot and kettle black and everything else. Look, both sides, Donald Trump as well as Obama and Clinton, they all had their little hand in the different situations that were happening with these children coming across the border. But I'll tell you one thing, you ought to take a look at this video we did right here on Patreon. I couldn't load it here because it's just that sensitive. Besides going into this story about these children and what should be done and bringing in the balance, because like I said, we're not for illegal immigration at all. But nonetheless, what we are for is keeping these families together. As we pointed out in the film that we did for Patreon, you know, they've already built the FEMA camps to be able to house us. Why separate us? That does kind of remind you of what happened in Nazi Germany. Yeah, take the parents, separate the kids, don't worry about it. But I know there's so many people that sit there and they like to run out there and say, well, you know, they did this bad thing, they broke our law. So we have to separate the children. You know, I'm glad President Trump signed the executive order trying to keep the families together, but there's still a major problem getting these kids back with their parents. But in this documentary right here, not a documentary, but this 50-minute video here, 57-minute video actually, I go into great details, including Jeff Sessions and another one of President Trump's people there that were speaking out clearly saying, look, you broke the law, we're taking your kids. And everybody tries to make it like Trump never wanted this to happen. And in fact, Jeff Sessions comes out and lies in an interview afterwards saying, we never really wanted to take them to begin with. But in the very video that he does, he says, you're going to break the law, you're going to lose your kids. It's unbelievable. But here's what really gets interesting in this video here. I want to share just a little bit with you here. And this is what caused things to get real serious real quick. I wanted to share with people because there's a lot of people that love President Trump. And as I've always said, I had a lot of high hopes that President Trump was really going to be a great man and that he was going to be a great president and he was going to restore back the republic and that he would be a true patriot. You know, but the thing is, like so many friends that I know that love President Trump as well are waking up and realizing he's just as much part of a New World Order agenda, but the only difference is the evangelicals have joined hand in hand with him. I took a look in this video of his spiritual advisors, and what's shocking, every one, practically with the exception of one, are supporters of Pope Francis and the New World Order agenda. Listen to a few minutes of just this here. Make sure we get the volume up where you guys can hear this, though. Under his own particular, Dr. Dobson, he actually had written, he was on Dr. Dobson was probably the best advisor he's had.
Evangelical advisors seek to tamp down Vatican criticism. Evangelical advisors of President Trump have requested a meeting with Pope Francis to quell criticism from Vatican allies over the political direction of American Catholics. The dispute began when Catholic and Presbyterian leader close to the pontiff accused conservative American Catholics of forming a Christian alliance of hate with evangelical fundamentalists when they support Trump. In July, prominent Jesuit journalists published with the Vatican's approval criticized conservative U.S. Catholics for joining what is described as the political radicalization of conservative evangelicals. The authors of the article accuse of the groups seeking political expedient alliance to promote a nostalgic dream of theatric type of state and a xenophobic and Islamophobic vision that wants walls. Now, the thing is, if you look in here, Johnny Moore, an evangelical advisors to Trump and a board member of the National Association of Evangelicals, sent a letter to Pope Francis requesting the meeting on behalf of some of the U.S. evangelical leaders, including those close to the president. He sent the request at the Archdiocese of Washington and other intermediaries on August the 3rd. Rather than being offended, we have chosen to attempt to make peace, Moore says. And again, Moore, another one. Jack Graham was going to be a part of this as well, who is also a spiritual advisor to the president, and Samuel Rodriguez Jr., and also Ronnie Floyd, again, another spiritual advisor to the president, all seeking links and making sure their connection with the Pope of Rome is really good. And then we have right here, former Trump campaign faith council member of the First Baptist Dallas pastor Robert Jeffries on President Trump meeting with Pope Francis. Listen to what he has to say in this particular interview.
Robert Jeffries, a former Trump campaign faith advisory council member and a Fox News contributor. We're always happy to see you, Pastor. Thanks for coming up. I got to ask, to use a southern phrase, these two gentlemen have had some words in the past. Were you shocked, as I was, to see how well they seem to get along?
No, I wasn't shocked at all. I have been in meetings. In fact, I moderated a meeting one time between President Trump and some never-Trump religious leaders. And that came in, David, all prepared to give the president a piece of their mind. And by the time it was over, he had disarmed them, he listened to them, and they were eating out of the palm of his hand. Wow. So I wasn't surprised at all that the Pope and the president emerged as BFFs.
Best friends forever, BFF. The Pope and Donald Trump. By the way, I go into about 8 or 9, I finally just got tired of going through them, about 8 or 9 of his spiritual advisors and their direct links with the Pope of Rome and the New World Order itself. And then you wonder what direction we're headed in. Everything, friends, is just a play. What they did to the children, separating them from the parents, is only practicing getting ready for what's coming in America. Don't worry. President Trump will be safe and his family will be safe as all this unfolds on us. In fact, I noticed today that Lisa Haven was putting out a video talking about, Christians are that next target. We've been saying this all along ourselves. Listen, if you really want to know the truth, support this broadcast. And by the way, our Shabbat Live will be this Shabbat, but not this evening. Because of the things that were happening in the world, I wanted to get some of this information out to you as quickly as possible. But we have a very interesting Shabbat Live tomorrow evening here on Israeli News Live. We will run it again on Israeli News Live instead of Danun Institute. It'll be live for you guys tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Prague time, which should be about 3 p.m. Eastern time. Join us, won't you? And support the work we're doing. We do need your help in making this happen. Believe me, it's not popular what we say. And because of some of the things that I say, and I'm quite candid about what I say, there are people that do like to come out and say, we will withhold our funding to your work. You know, I have to understand, I'll never back down though. If I'm wrong in something, I'll take correction. But I'm here to tell you the truth. I can't be bought or paid for. I can only tell you what's true. Because that's what God has placed in my heart to do. And this I'll do. IsraeliNewsLive.org is our website. Patreon.com/Israeli News Live is where you can find this video at. 57 minutes. My wife listened to this today. In fact, I listened to it, and I was even kind of surprised some of the things that I said in there. She said it is the best video she's ever heard me do. She said, you've got to share this with the people on Israeli News Live. Let them know where it's at. Give them a little idea of what was said in this video. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Let me just jump over real quick. I'd like to say hello to everyone that is watching tonight. You guys are so wonderful, and we do love you guys. And I realize I don't please everybody. You know, guys, listen. But we're actually tomorrow night. Let me tell you something about Shabbat Live, too, real quick before we go off the air here. Tomorrow night, we're not going to be playing church. We're going to take it like the prophets of old did. We're going to break it down with the Torah, with what God has commanded Israel, and to get our people to wake up, to recognize the Mashiach, to get not just the Jews to recognize who he is, but to wake up all Israel, including the other tribes dispersed, that many of them are believers in Yeshua. I need to get people to wake up to realize what's going on. We are living in a late hour. Whether you believe in, whether you're religious or not, tune in. I'm telling you, if you come here just to watch the news and stuff, it'll bless your heart. You will see things and hear things that you don't hear anywhere else. You will find out. If you've never listened to me speak about the Word of God before, other than you get irritated here in the prophetic insights, tune in. You will find out we're not going to be playing church. We're serious about what we're talking about. Did I say that right? I don't know. Anyway, thank you, moderators, Sister Ashley, Christine, Jesse. I'm assuming Sister Jennifer is there as well. Love you guys so much. And these moderators, they really deserve a hand here in what they're doing. By the way, you know, I do say from time to time that we are being blocked in YouTube as far as our views and stuff. One person was making a comment. They said, Steve, oh, stop it. There's nobody doing this or that. Well, you know, YouTube sent us a message, and we photographed it. I don't have it up today, stating that exact thing. They said, your views are much higher than what you are seeing projected. We are sorry, it's a glitch in the system, and we don't know why people can't see how many people are viewing, but we are working on the problem. I thought it was interesting they actually admitted it. Thumbs up the video, though, if you would. If it's a blessing to you what you're seeing. And we will try to put these links in. Again, remember, when we're putting the links in now, we drop out the www out of that, because that way you can just copy, paste it into the URL and see some of this information that we've shared with you tonight. Pray for these people. It is a tragedy, this war. I don't care if it's Syria dropping the bombs or who's dropping the bombs. Somewhere on the ground there's innocent people, innocent lives that are being lost at the same time. And I realize, even the U.S., when the U.S. military is at war, we have the precision-guided bombs, and I know that they're always trying as well to limit the casualties of civilians. But of course, in the case of I believe it was Aleppo, it seems like the U.S. coalition just did not take that into consideration. Still buried in the rubble, unbelievable number of people there. In fact, RT did a special coverage just recently with the actress, well, I can't think of her name right offhand, but there was a very well-known actress that has always worked for different relief organizations there. And she went there, and she was speaking of the stench. You could still smell the bodies that are buried in the rubble there. And what a disaster it is. Angelina Jolie, that's her name, I remember it now. But anyway, very troubling indeed what the Syrian people have suffered, and just unbelievable. And for what? For what? Anyway, blessings to you all. Shalom, shalom. We will talk tomorrow night. Don't forget, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. Israeli time. Erev Tov.